So today we want to talk about unlocking God's power within you. We want to talk about unlocking God's power within you. So we've heard for the past couple of weeks about the power, and I said this just a minute ago. What we have available to us, what we can speak, and how God can react when we say things or put things out in the atmosphere. And we've heard those things before. You've heard that before. Speak life. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. We hear these things all the time. But how come, though, even when we hear those things, we're still being defeated in our lives? We wake up and we say things. We believe certain things, but yet life is still difficult. We're still not making it. We're praying for things and aren't getting them. Why do things happen like that? It's a rewiring that's in us. Because I tell you straight up, there's nothing wrong with the power. There's nothing wrong with the power. It's our ability to be able to access it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I only have 3 points, major points. I mean, I got 3 points, but I got 3 major points, all right? And I'm going to give them to you up front. I'm going to give all 3 of them to you right now, and then we're going to talk about them. The way to attain God's power, it says, number 1, know your power comes from God alone. The second one is meditate to rewire your mindset. And the third one is repeat. You say, that's not 3 points, that's 2 points. No. It's definitely 3. We'll talk about them in just a minute. I want to start right here with Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22. And it says this right here, you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your, what's that word? Be made new in the attitude of your minds. And to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. So we were taught to be made new in the minds of what we have. We were taught to be made new up here. Because you can't be made new outside until you're made new inside, right? So we were taught to be made new on the inside. But it's our minds, because that's where everything starts at, right? It is our minds that is keeping us from realizing the power that God has for us. So let's get into talking about some examples here. We're going to talk about renewing your mind. I'm going to talk a lot about Moses, and I'm going to talk about the burning bush. And I know that's a story we hear all the time, but I like using stories that we already know because you don't have to really reteach them. We don't have to explain all the backstory of what's going on, but when you go back and look at it, there was almost no better verse or no better story that I could find other than this one. And I'm going to show you how. So let's talk about Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. Let's go there. It says, the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out. Okay, now, like I said, this is the burning bush. Moses walks up, bush is on fire, not burning up, and the bush is speaking to him. All right? Now, Moses doesn't know this from whoever this is talking to him, but he knows that it's a bush on fire. And he's having a conversation with this bush. I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of their land into a good spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of all these names here, okay, right? The Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Pezerites, the Hivitites, the Jebusites, and the Gigabites, and the Pedialites, and all of that, okay? All right. And so he says all of that to Moses, and Moses says, okay, cool, burning bush. Go down and get those people. That sounds awesome. They're a nation. But if you on fire right now and you're not burning up, I don't think they can take you. I think you can do exactly what it is you just said. All right, cool. So verse 9 says this, and now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. Moses, okay, all right. Verse 10. So now go. Wait, what? It says go. He's talking to Moses, right? God just talked about all of the stuff that he was about to do, but he's telling Moses because Moses just listening to him. Oh, okay, cool. All right, you're going to go and do all of this stuff. I'm going to stand right here, and I tell them it was you, burning bush, when it was all said and done. All right? And the burning bush says, no, no, no. You go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. So this went from hearing about something that God was about to do to now becoming the front runner and making it happen. Now, I don't know if any of you all have ever heard anything like this before. It's always good to hear a plan until you the one got to make it happen. Sounds to me, if you got the plan, Lord, you go on down there and get them. I don't understand the plan. And actually, I love this dialogue here because that's exactly what happens. Moses is not feeling this interaction anymore at all. And watch how this goes. Y'all have heard me talk about this before, but Moses said to God, wait a minute, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? And this is a nation of people now, right? You're going to the leader. That I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt. God responds to him in verse 12. God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. This is the part I always love, right? When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said, okay, all right. Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God says, okay, look, you tell them I am who I am. I don't have time to tell you who all I am right now. You just go and tell them that I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name by which I am remembered from generation to generation. All of this stuff God is feeding Moses to build him up, right? Next verse. Go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has to be done in Egypt. Next verse. And I have promised to bring you up out of your misery into the land of the Canaanites. Here we go. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Pezerites, the Hivitites, the Jebusites, and the Perizzites. All right, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the, next verse, Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey to the desert to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. We almost getting there. Come on. Next verse. All right, but I know the king of Egypt will not listen. Now listen to this. Now God said, you're going to do all of that, right? But I already know he's not going to let him go unless a mighty hand compels him. I already know it's not going to happen. I want you to do all of this, but this song, it won't work, all right? So this is what's going to happen. I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. And after that, he will let you go. Verse 21, and I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed towards his people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in the house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. Now, God gave all of this ammunition, right? He basically gave his whole plan to Moses right then and there, right? So in the next verse, Moses says, chapter 4, verse 1, well, what if they don't believe me or listen to me and say the Lord did not appear to you? Did you not just hear, bro, what they said? What God just told you? You're going to do all of this stuff. All of this is going to happen. The Lord says, okay, we're going to try this another way. Verse 2 says, okay, what is that in your hand? Moses says back, a staff. Verse 3 says, the Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground, and what happens? Became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So Moses reached out, took hold of the snake, and turned it back into a staff, or it turned back into a staff in his hand. This, said the Lord, is so they may believe the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. Then the Lord said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, it was leprous, like snow. Now put it back into your cloak, he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored, just like the rest of his flesh. Then the Lord said, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first miraculous sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile, pour it on dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground. Now, we're just going through the story right now. We're going to dissect all of this in just a minute. All of this stuff, right? So here's a man who just had a staff in his hand, threw it on the ground, and what happened to it? Became a snake, right? He grabbed this snake by the tail, and then it went back into a staff again. Now, if it wasn't crazy enough that the thing turned into a snake, when it turned back again, that's when he should have really known something was going on, right? Then he puts his hand into his cloak, pulls it out, he got leprosy. Puts it back in there, and then it's gone again. So not only can God allow certain things to happen, he can restore as well too. He's showing him this. And then he says, if those two don't work, take some water, pour it on the ground, and it'll become blood. That should be enough, right? Well, Moses is looking for something else, right? So verse 10, he says this: I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. 11 says this: the Lord said to him, who gave man his mouth? Who makes him deaf or mute? Who gives sight or makes him blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now again, go. I will help you speak and teach you what to say. Then Moses finally gets down to what the meat of it is. Say, please send somebody else to do this. You could have said that up front, right? Verse 14 says, well, the Lord's anger burned against Moses. Well, the reason was all of these excuses. All of this power he just showed him, all of these things that he would be able to do through him, and he kept coming up with excuses on why he wouldn't be the one to be able to do it. Moses was distraught. But can you blame him, though? Can you really blame him based off of what he was asked to do? Oh, people are like, well, God was with him. See, y'all some Christians in here. See, so as soon as God asks y'all to do said thing, it goes the same way. How could he go up against an entire nation? One man. Who's going to listen to him? Is Pharaoh just going to listen to him? Then when he goes and tells the Israelites, look, I'm going to bring you out. Well, where are we going? It's somewhere, and it's supposed to be nice, and it's pretty, and God said that it's going to be something just for y'all. Everyone's going to talk about him.
That's good, fella.
What could he do? Exodus, well, let's go back again. Chapter 3, verse 11, Moses said to God, who am I that should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? This is back in the beginning, when they first started this dialogue, right? Who am I that I should do that? I'm not anybody. Moses says, how can I do this myself? Even an army that's to go in there and make a move like that, they got to strategize before they go in there. I'm one person. What power do I have as an individual to make this happen? And so what's the first thing that the Lord says back to him at the very beginning, when it was a legit question as in, who am I? This is what the Lord says. He says in verse 12, God said, I will be with you. Now, normally I talk about the second half of it, and this will be the sign. When you've done all of this, you're going to do this. But no, the part we're going to talk about today is, I will be with you.
That's good.
Moses asks, how will all of this be done? And the Lord responds with, you're not going alone. I'm going to be there with you. And so now that it has been established that God is going to be with him, y'all follow me so far, right? God said, I'll be with you. God is with him, talking to him at this particular point in time right now. God says, I am with you, and because I am with you, let me show you some of the things you will be able to do.
Amen.
Y'all see that? Because I am with you, you can do this. So, first point right here is God's presence will give you access to his power. The Lord begins to explain what is possible after Moses kept asking questions. Chapter 4, verses 1 through 9, Moses said, well, what if they don't believe me? God said, I already told you I'm going to be with you. But the Lord also shows that all of these things are possible. And I put them up, if we can get them all on the same slide. Because the Lord was with him, the staff was able to turn into a snake and back into a staff. Moses' hand immediately becomes leprous and back again. The water from the Nile will turn to blood on the ground because God was with him. This power was available to Moses because the Lord was with him. I know I keep repeating that. I need y'all to hear it. It was because the Lord was with him that these things could happen. Let me talk about another story here. God's presence gave Samson access to his power. Now, Samson was a powerful and strong man, all right? He was a strong man anyway. But if you look throughout Scripture, at the time that he did the most outrageous stuff, there's something specific the word says here. Let's go to Judges chapter 14, verse 5. Let's look at this real quick. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring towards us. Y'all know the story, right? Y'all remember this, right? The lion. What did he do to the lion? He killed the lion. Well, he killed him, but he ripped him up, right? Like, he used man strength. Well, actually, this wasn't man strength. He used God's strength, and he pulled the thing apart like it was a small piece of meat, right? Okay, so look, verse 6. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. Now, how many times do we look past that and not pay attention to what that says right here? The Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. See, so I thought that Samson had automatically all of this power upon him because he had long hair. When the Spirit hit him, he had a power he didn't have before. So that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as he might have torn a young goat. Here's another one. Same chapter, Judges 14, verse 19. Y'all see that key sentence up there again? It's a different verse. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. What did he do this time? He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of their belongings, and gave their clothes to those who explained the riddle. Okay, all right, well, he struck down 30 of their men. We don't have to go any further than that. I got another piece. Same thing. Judges chapter 15, no. Verse 14. Can y'all think what we're going to find here? As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him shouting, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. Now, you hear all the time what he did in this situation, but there was something that had to happen for him to do that. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Verse 15 says, finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Now, however strong any individual man is, he's not going to kill 1,000 of them on his own strength. But it required the Spirit of the Lord to come upon him to be able to do it. So it was because of the presence that he had the power, but also if you can say it that way, you can say it backwards as well too. Without the presence, you don't have the power. If you don't have the presence of God in your life, you don't have the power. Judges chapter 16, since we're still talking about Samson. Chapter 16 talks about a young woman named Delilah. And what happens when she learned the secret of Samson's power. You say he gave that thing up, is that what you said? There was a lot of that going on. Okay, all right, so. Verse 17 says this. So he told her everything. No razor has ever been used. I missed that word. No razor has ever been used on my head, because I have been a Nazarite set apart to God since birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. So Samson just straight told Delilah this, right? But not only did he tell her this, there was something in there that we kind of missing out on, and it was the fact that he knew his power came from God. He knew where his power came from. He knew it wasn't of himself. I'm not just somebody that happens to be strong. He realized that his power came from the Lord. So all these feats of greatness and all these things he could do was because his power came from God, not from himself. By himself, he can only do a little bit. But with God, he could strike down 1,000 people with the jawbone of a donkey. All right, same chapter, Judges chapter 16, verse 19. Having put him to sleep on her lap, she called a man to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him. Now, what does that say right there? That last sentence. I got my point in here. There it is. And his strength left him. Then she called, next verse. Then she called, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. The previous verse, go back one verse, please. His strength left him. 20. He did not know that the Lord had left him. So when the Lord left him, the power he had left at the same time. Do y'all see that? Samson had power because of the presence. But when the presence left, so did the power. Now let's make this personal for just a minute here. You also have power because of the presence. The presence of the Lord gives you power, just like them. Now, we said a minute ago that Samson knew that his power came from the Lord. Moses in the other situation did not. Remember all the going back and forth that Moses did with God? He didn't realize that just because God will be with him, that would be everything that he needed to go and do what God had for him to accomplish. Moses had to learn the power of God. He had to learn as time went on. And Moses was able to do incredible things after learning what the presence of God can do for you. And it wasn't until he was able to learn those things that he could say to Joshua, and so many years later in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 8, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. See, I know it now. He told me from the beginning he would be with me, but I didn't know what that meant. But I can tell you, young man, he will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. Sounds like such a simple thing to say, but he's like, Joshua, you don't understand what it means to have the presence of the Lord with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I have seen plagues come and go. I have seen bodies of water stand up and move out of the way because the Lord was with me. I have seen a burning bush that had a conversation with me. The things that can happen when the Lord is with you. The Lord tells us that he will be with us. In Isaiah chapter 43 and 2 says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And it says, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. They will not sweep over you because he is with you. Verse 3, it says, when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze because I am with you. The power comes from the presence of the Lord. This section right here, you will not be burned when you walk through the fire, reminds me of young 3 Hebrew boys we talked about once before, who when they got in there and they were not being burned, somebody else was able to say, man, the power of God is so strong in their lives. I can see somebody else in there with them. How many folks did we throw in there? We threw 3 people in there, but the Lord is so, or somebody is so strong in there with them, I got to look again. They were not burned because they had the power through the presence. Romans chapter 8, verse 31 says, what then shall we say in response to this? If God is for us, who can be against us? When we have access to all of this, what's going to really stand up in our way? You said us. That's very honest, man. That's very honest. But that's why we're talking about it today, because we do get in the way. We are not by ourselves. We're too busy being Moses right now. But God tells us that he is with us. We keep coming up with reason after reason after reason after reason on why we shouldn't have to do what God needs for us to do. But God keeps saying that there is power in the presence. You have all of this that is accessible to you. And it's the same thing I said at the beginning. If you don't have the power of God in your life, there's nothing wrong with the power.
That's right. There you go. That's right. That's good. That's right. That's good.
So this is how we are to know that our power comes from God alone. Power doesn't come from ourselves. And there's so many different things that I could continue to say about this, but I think we got it for right now. So let's talk about the next piece. Meditating to rewire your mindset. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Becomes new again, changing it, rewiring it, reshaping it, reforming it. Your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Do not conform any longer to the pattern, but be transformed by what? So it doesn't say be transformed by your actions or be transformed by your words or anything else like that. No, it starts in one specific place. Be transformed by the renewing of your, because everything starts up here. Everything starts up here. Moses needed to get his mind renewed. But I'm going to go back to that in just a second. Here's the point I was making out of that, is that our mindset is the key to unlocking the power of God. You want to know why we don't have the power of God in our lives? It's our mindset. Because again, if there's nothing wrong with the power, and it's just the two of us,
Come on, Doc. That's it. That's it.
let's go back to Exodus, same story. Chapter 4, verse 3. I told y'all it's a lot in here. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground and it became a snake. Okay, well, actually, we don't have to read all of this. I can say this really quickly. Threw it on the ground, became a snake. Reached out, grabbed the snake, turned back into a staff, right? All right, so what happens after that? Hand into the cloak. Pulls it out, leprous, puts it back in. No leprosy. Right? What was the third one? The water, right? Now, here's a question. Why did the Lord show Moses all of this stuff? Now think about that for a second. Why did the Lord show him all of this? Somebody say, okay, I'm hearing a little bit, He had to build his faith, build his belief. Somebody said, show him what time it was. Okay, right? Any of them? Show him who he is? Any of that stuff, right? So he could believe. Okay. The reason why I feel like God showed him all of that is because he didn't have a standard to be able to uphold to this burning bush. So the burning bush says, I will be with you. Okay, cool. So what does all this mean? Now he begins to show all of these miraculous things that the burning bush can do. Or the God. I keep referring to it as a burning bush because as Moses knows at this point, this is what it is. He's starting to say that I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. But Moses is having to accept that because he's looking at a bush. Right? So he begins to see these things with his own eyes. And this becomes something that it becomes a faith builder for Moses as time goes on. So wait a minute. So if he can take a snake, or a staff, throw it on the ground and it becomes a snake, and he can turn it back again, and he can make a disease appear on me and make it go away just like that, or if he could take water and turn it into blood, man, what can he do? What else is he capable of? So when God speaks to him later on, it says, you know what? Raise your staff up. I will move this body of water up and out of the way. Moses didn't have to think of it anymore because I've already seen you do the impossible. This is just another impossible thing. But because you have already done the impossible, this one can't stand up to you either. So as soon as God told Moses to go out there and put his staff in the water, he told the Israelites, if y'all remember the whole thing we were talking about, keep moving. What are y'all complaining to me for? Go out there and make something happen. These miraculous things. But before we get all the way there, let's go all the way back. Like I said, we just saw these three things. Let's see, what chapter are we on right now? We're on chapter 4. Yeah, okay, so let's go to chapter 7 real quick, verse 8. Moses would have this in mind when he needed it, because the Lord had already showed it to him, right? The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, verse 9, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, then say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. Now, this is Moses talking, let's see here. Moses could tell him at that point, God can do that. I saw it, man. Look, I lie to you not. I saw him do it. This wasn't something crazy anymore. And you know also something, when the power of God would have manifested, they don't have to run from it no more either. Because they realize where this power is coming from. This was something that became a reminder to Moses of the power of God. I'm showing you this to rewire your mindset to know that I can do this stuff. This is easy. And I can do greater things. I'm just showing you the tip of the iceberg. What about Abraham? Same thing. Genesis chapter 15, verse 4. Then the word of the Lord came to him, this man will not be your heir, but the son coming from your own body will be your heir, who is your own flesh and blood. He took him outside and he said, look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. It says, Abram believed the Lord. All right, God, if you say that, I believe you. The Lord gave Abram something to think about. Abram says to himself, I might not have any children right now, but Lord, you say they will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. So even though I might not have any children at this exact moment, if I need a reminder of how great you are, I can just walk outside any nighttime and be reminded of the promise that you have given to me. It's right there. Every time, up until he had a son, and afterwards, this example that God shown would be a reminder to him of the power of God. It's a reminder. Remember now, this was something that he was using in faith till he had his own son, right? Then after he had his own son, it was a reminder, if God can do this, because this was impossible. Remember, he wasn't supposed to have a kid. Y'all remember that, right? Something impossible happened. So now that the impossible has happened, what can God not do? Now here's the next point. This is really more of a question. Do you know what your God can do? Everybody like, yes, we know. We know what he can do. And really, you should. Really. And I'm not joking. You really should know what your God can do. We've read about it. You hear about this stuff every Sunday and every Wednesday. You hear people sharing videos with you, talking about testimonies and all this other kind of stuff on social media and emails and all this other kind of stuff. You hear stuff about what God is doing. Do you really know what God can do? You should. You really should. But here's a question. How well do we know these things? In the situation with Abraham, how often do you remind yourself of what God can do? Serious question. If we're talking about the power of God, how often do you remind yourself of the power of God? Yeah, you know, we hear about it when, you know, whoever's teaching teaches on it. And whatever else. There's a scripture in Joshua, I'm going to talk about, chapter 1, verse 8. And it says this, do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it. How often? Day and night, so you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. So it says, do not let it depart. Meditate on it. Say it again. One more time. So you may be careful to do everything written in it. So let me ask you all a question. Why do you meditate on it? It's right here. Let's make sure our comprehensions work. So why do you meditate on it? All right. So we can digest on it. Okay. All right. Meditate on it how often? Day and night, right? Not just Sundays and Wednesdays. How often? Not just Sundays and Wednesdays. How often? Not just Sundays and Wednesdays? Day and night. You know, the definition of meditate is to think deeply or to focus one's mind for a period of time. So we are thinking deeply on a particular thing day and night so we can be careful to do everything in it, right? Y'all see how I'm breaking this down, right? So we are thinking deeply and meditating on a particular thing so we can be careful to do everything that is written in there. Let me say this another way. So by meditating on it day and night, we are focusing our mind on it constantly because this mindset gives you the ability to do it. Now, I might have just lost some people there. This says right here, meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. It says that you will only be careful to do everything written in it when you meditate on it day and night, or am I reading that wrong? So to be able to carefully do everything in it, you got to meditate on it day and night, right? So meditating on it day and night gives you the ability to be able to make it happen.
That's right.
Now y'all follow me, right? So let me word this another way then. Keep the word before you daily, because there's power in knowing. All right? And then this one they have right here. Keep the word before you daily, because the power comes in knowing the word. Oh, I'm losing some people here. Do we need to go back to the scripture and do this one more time? Somebody saying no, but it looks like a couple people saying yes. I don't mind, all right? Let's do this one more time. Joshua 1:8. All I am doing is breaking down what this says, because there is so much that is written here. We read it one time, we're just like, oh, okay, we need to read the word daily, but we don't read the word daily. So if we can read that and we don't do it, either we don't want to do it or we really don't understand what we just read. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Like I said, it says that you have to do A to get this. You have to do this to get this. So being careful to do everything in it, you got to do what? So if you don't meditate on it day or night, then you will not be able to do everything in it. Do y'all see what I'm saying here? So the point that I was making, there is a power that comes to allow you to be able to do everything written in it from meditating on it. Here's another way of saying it. Telling yourself what God can do on a regular basis. All right? Telling yourself about the power of God very often can give you a power that you would not have if you don't keep it in front of you. Daily, right? Daily, day and night, day and night. What does that mean? That means repetition, right? Doing it over and over and over again, doing the same thing over and over again because it builds something up in you. Watch this real quick. Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 1. I will stand in my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he has to say to me and what answer, to give to this complaint. Verse 2. Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. For the revelation, watch this, y'all, revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, read that part. Well, hold up. Wait. Y'all saints don't run from me. All right, don't run with it. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and not delay. So this thing says that we're to write this revelation down and make it plain on tablets. Write the revelation down and make it plain. Write it down and make it plain. Well, what do we need to make it plain for? Why do we need to write it down? He says so we can remember it. Oh, okay, y'all agree with that? Is that what it is? Oh, okay. Well, I don't have to say nothing else about it then. I was about to say because we can go back and look at it another time. And then you can teach somebody else about the same thing. And then now everybody's reading the same thing over and over and over again as a reminder of what the revelation originally said. We write it down. We talk about it. The next time God does something powerful in your life, write it down. So you can go back and remember later on. This thing says right here, for the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and not delay. We stop telling people how powerful our God is. We stopped talking about division because we didn't write it down. God showed me this thing, and you know what? It was something like this. It was something like this or whatever. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and not delay. The revelation awaits an appointed time. See, now let me make sure I don't lose anybody with this. A lot of times God shows us stuff, but because we don't ever keep it before us, it loses his power because we forget it. Some people heard me. Too many times, because we don't ever keep something before us, because our minds are not rewired to constantly go over it, you begin to lose subtle details of that vision that God gave you. And once you lose so much of it, there's not enough power there to make it happen. If the revelation awaits an appointed time, it's up to us to keep it going until it shows up. God, you said this thing was going to happen. Too many times we stop praying for healing because God said he was going to heal me, but I don't really know what that means anymore because I stopped telling myself every day that I am healed. Too many times we start accepting debt in our lives because we keep telling ourselves, I heard somebody say I could be debt free, but I'm not telling myself that every day. The vision begins to lose its power. This is why it starts up here. We got to rewire our mindset. With everything, just because you told me one time doesn't mean that I got it. So the major point of what I was just saying is this. We lose the power because we can't keep our minds on it. We don't keep our minds on it. All these things that God is telling you over and over and over again, you better write it down. You better have that thing on your refrigerator next to your kids. You better have it on your steering wheel in your car every time you get in there. This is what God said about me. Out of sight, out of mind. Yeah, you'll remember that he promised a bunch of stuff to you, but you don't remember the details of it. God says, I want to do so much in you, but you don't leave me with nothing to work with. Starts in our mind. It's the power of repetition that helps us to get it. Now, I got an example of this. How many of us, well, I guess everybody, we were in school. I was about to say how many of us studied in school, but I don't want to get y'all in trouble for. Okay, so one of the ways that we used to study in school was what? Repetition. How do you do repetition? Writing something over and over again, over and over and over again. Okay, all right. There was something that we used to have be about this big right here, and we used to write on it, right? Flashcards, right? I made some flashcards for y'all. We're going to take y'all back to school really quickly, but we're going to show y'all how flashcards help in repetition and help in learning something. All right, you got the first flashcard for me? Just give them a second, see if they can put that up there. Y'all see that? Now, at some point in time or another, to learn your multiplication tables, you had flashcards. And then what would you do? You would look at it, and you had an answer on the back, right? So you would look at it and say, okay, I think it's this. And then you flip it over real quick and see if you're right? All right, so this right here, what's the answer to this? All right, so what's on the back? There it is right there. All right, so the second one. 5, right? All right, so let's look at the back of it. All right, so this is what you would do. You would go over these over and over and over and over again, right? Now, what this would do is that this would ingrain this in you. This will become more of, well, yeah, I know my multiplication tables or I know my division tables, but it got to a point where you didn't have to think about it because you knew it so well, right? Now, let me tell you the kind of stuff you need to be putting up. Let's put the first one up. Whose needs will the Lord meet according to his riches and glory? Mine. The very next one. Because the Lord is with me, what should I fear? Nothing. And you see the scripture references right there for it. Let's go to the next one. What weapon formed against me will prosper? You just heard him talk about it tonight. Not one. Next one, no matter what, who will not let go of me? The Lord. One more, who gives me the power to speak life over me and my family? My God. My Lord. Actually, I do have one more, and this is a good one right here. Who is more than a conqueror? Now, let me show you how repetition works. Go back to the first one. Whose needs will the Lord meet according to His riches and glory? See, the thing is that you got to get to a point where you know it without thinking about it. That's how it works. You tell yourself the thing over and over and over again to where it becomes second nature to you. What's the next one? Because the Lord is with me, what should I fear? Nothing. Next one. What weapons formed against me will prosper? None. Not one. Next one. No matter what, who won't let go of me? No. The Lord. Next one. Who gives me the power to speak life over me and my family? Last one. Come on, one more. Who is more than a conqueror? I am. Now, wait a minute. Hold up. Hold up. It sounds like y'all know, but I think we need to do it one more time. Let's go back. Whose needs will the Lord meet according to His riches and glory? Some of y'all changing already like y'all ain't heard this before. This is brand. I'm telling y'all, repetition will change you. Because the Lord is with me, what should I fear? Nothing. Next one. What weapon formed against me shall prosper? No matter what, who won't let go of me? No matter what, won't let go. What does no matter what means? No matter what, won't let go. Next one. Who gives me the power to speak life over me and my family? The power to speak life. Out of all the things that we have that we can speak death, do you know you can speak life over me and my family? Next one. And who is more than a conqueror? Now, we just read these 3 or 4 times right now. What if y'all read this every day? This is how your mind gets reworked to make things happen. Oh, yeah, I remember somebody telling me that. Oh, I know what the scripture says, but do you really know what it means? That's another one. I can do all things through God. Whatever they want to be. I just wrote down a couple of them. Oh, see, yeah, there you go. I hope y'all going to write these down instead of shouting them out in church and then go home and don't do it, right? Write them down, put them someplace where you can go back into them. Because this reminds you of the type of God that you serve. Too many times we say, hey, God, do something big in my life. But we forget because the revelation awaits an appointed time. And we don't have enough to sustain till it gets there. Can't hold it up. So here's the conclusion right here. We aren't meant to live life not attaining the power of the Lord. He didn't put us here and give us all of that and make it all available for us not to be able to get it. We are not meant to be defeated at every turn. God told us that we are His special possession, that we belong to Him. And He also told us that He will be with us. What more do you need? We might realize that God is with us, but what does that mean? We don't spend enough time telling each other what that means, telling ourselves what that means. We don't really talk about that. God is with me. Okay. So what? What does that mean, brother? What does that mean, sister? I mean, it means God is with me. We got to do better than that, y'all. There's so much that we have available to us. Through God, we have all authority. He's given it to us. And He is with us. So last scripture I'll give, Matthew 28, verse 18. And it says this, Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. All authority. Meaning saying, okay, look, all the power He got. All the power He got. Oh, in heaven and earth. That's right. He got more power than just earth. He got heaven's power too. Now, you know, that's one thing to have all the power on earth, right? In heaven too? which means it can not only change where you are right now, but where you're going as well, too. Verse 19. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. This is what we're supposed to do, right? This is what I was talking about, the purpose in the ministry. But our individual purposes as well. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And finally, surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. He is with us, y'all. And we'll go back to our points, and this is the last thing I'm going to leave in front of you. The way to attain God's power is to know your power comes from God alone, not you. We spend too many times trying to do it our way. Power comes from God. The second one is that we have to meditate to rewire our mindset. Remember, I told you it's not the power. It's not God. It's us. And then thirdly, repeat. And the reason why repeat is up there is because you can tell yourself one time, and you can be like, oh, okay, I got it, but you really don't have it.
That's right.
You got to believe this the same way you know your next breath is going to work.
All right.
The same way you know when you get thirsty, the water's going to be able to fix it. The same way you know when you're tired, that sleep is going to be able to sustain you. We don't know it like that. That's why you repeat it. It's through repetition that you get stuff. Something can be told to you on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, throughout the week, but you hear it. This is why they make the jokes all the time about how sometimes we leave church and don't remember what the pastor talked about. We heard it, but we didn't get it.
All right.
That's where repetition comes from. All right, I'm going to stop right there.